As usual, on Sunday morning, Alicia went to the market to buy groceries. It was one of the few moments she could truly relax after a long and busy work week. Since getting married, she had mostly gone straight from work to home, so very few people in the neighborhood actually knew who she was. On top of that, she was wearing a face mask that morning, which was why she ended up hearing something quite interesting about herself. As Alicia walked past the vegetable section, she suddenly stopped when she heard someone mention her name. "Hey, do you ladies know Valeria's daughter-in-law?" Another woman immediately chimed in. "You mean the girl her son insisted on marrying? The one who's lazy as can be?" A third woman eagerly joined the conversation. "Oh, she's not just lazy. She's picky too. She doesn't contribute financially to the household, and she leaves all the work for Valeria to do." The crowd quickly gathered around and began gossiping. "What kind of daughter-in-law is that? No wonder Valeria didn't want her to marry into the family." As Alicia listened to their words, her emotions changed rapidly. At first, she was surprised. Then she felt hurt and disappointed. Finally, she became angry after hearing so many lies being told about her. At that moment, Alicia made a decision. She was going to let Valeria know that she was not someone who could be pushed around so easily. The loud voices coming from the end of the street once again belonged to Valeria and her son, Andre. This wasn't something that had started today. For months, the neighbors had watched the two of them argue over and over again. At first, people would slow down to listen and gossip about it. These days, nobody even bothered. They had heard the same argument so many times that it no longer interested anyone. The issue never changed. Valeria refused to accept the relationship between her son and a young woman named Alicia. Several months earlier, Andre had brought Alicia home to introduce her to his family. She was the woman he loved and hoped to marry. Unfortunately, Valeria hadn't been impressed. After listening to enough arguments between mother and son, the neighbors had pieced together the reason. In Valeria's eyes, Alicia was too strong-minded. She wasn't gentle or submissive enough to fit the image of a daughter-in-law Valeria had imagined. Today's argument was no different. After another round of criticism directed at Alicia, Andre finally dropped into a chair and pressed both hands against his head. "Mom, I honestly don't understand what you're thinking anymore. This is my future we're talking about. Why do you keep trying to control it?" Valeria folded her arms. "I'm doing it because I care about you. A woman like Alicia will run your life once she becomes part of this family." Andre sighed heavily. He had lost track of how many times he had tried to explain the same thing. People have different personalities. Why do you keep judging her because she's confident? Besides, aren't you doing the exact same thing to Dad? You're always trying to control him too. Valeria's face tightened. She was about to snap back when Raymond walked out of the house and looked at both of them with annoyance. "Do either of you ever get tired of having this same argument every single day?" he asked. Valeria immediately redirected her frustration toward him. "You really don't see it? Your son is making a terrible mistake." Raymond frowned. "And what mistake would that be?" "He's choosing the wrong woman." Raymond shook his head. "How is she the wrong woman?" "Alicia is educated, hardworking, and comes from a respectable family. Maybe you should stop criticizing someone else's daughter and take a closer look at your own son first." Valeria was left speechless for a second, but she refused to give in. "I don't care what anyone says. I still won't accept this relationship." Andre was exhausted. He didn't feel like arguing anymore. It was always the same. The moment Alicia's name came up, the house turned into a battlefield. A few of his friends had even suggested that he break up with Alicia just to make his mother happy. But love wasn't something he could simply walk away from. He and Alicia had been together for 3 years. They had met while working at the same company and had built their relationship over time. One of the biggest reasons Andre fell in love with her was her independence. From the day they started dating, Alicia had never once tried to rely on him for personal gain or take advantage of him. If anything, that quality made him admire her even more. What frustrated him was that his mother couldn't see it. Alicia might be outspoken, but she was also kind-hearted and genuine. After all these years, Andre knew her better than anyone. Behind her strong words was a woman who cared deeply about the people she loved. The constant arguments weren't solving anything. They only added more stress to his life. Alicia knew exactly what he was going through, but unlike Andre, she never seemed bothered by it. Whenever he became overwhelmed, she was always the one comforting him. "Why are you worrying so much?" she would say with a smile. "Give your mom a little more time. She'll come around eventually." Andre would still look uncertain. "And what if she doesn't?" Alicia would shrug calmly. "Then I'll wait, no matter how long it takes." Those simple words always eased his mind. And every time Alicia reassured him like that, Andre found himself loving and appreciating her even more. One morning, a group of friends gathered at a coffee shop in Charlotte because Omari wanted to introduce everyone to his younger sister, Imani, who had recently returned from overseas. Andre arrived early so he could pick up Alicia and bring her along. Omari had been Andre's closest friend since college, which meant he knew practically everything about Andre's life. Andre had shared his successes, frustrations, relationship problems, and especially the endless arguments between himself and his mother over Alicia. Imani had spent most of her life living abroad with her family and had only recently come back to visit. Years of living overseas had shaped her personality and outlook. It showed in the way she dressed and carried herself. She spoke with confidence and seemed completely comfortable in any conversation. After the rest of the group left, only Andre, Alicia, Omari, and Imani remained at the table. Omari leaned forward with a grin. "So, what's the latest? Has the Queen finally approved the wedding?" Andre simply let out a long sigh. That answer was enough. Curious, Imani looked at her brother. "What's he talking about?" Omari laughed and filled her in. Before long, Andre found himself explaining the entire situation with Alicia and his mother's constant opposition. After listening quietly, Imani smiled. "That's it? I thought this was going to be something serious." The others exchanged confused looks. To them, the situation felt anything but simple. Imani leaned back comfortably in her chair. "Trust me, this is easy." Everyone turned toward her, waiting for an explanation. She looked almost amused. Parents can be strange sometimes. If asking nicely doesn't work, then maybe you need to force them to see things differently. That immediately caught everyone's attention. Imani pulled her chair closer to the table and lowered her voice as she began outlining her idea. Nobody knew exactly what she was planning at first, but the longer she talked, the wider the smiles around the table became. By the time she finished, everyone looked impressed. Later that evening, Andre sat down for dinner with his parents and casually started a conversation. "Mom, I've been thinking about what you've said. Maybe you're right about Alicia." Valeria looked up immediately. "Really?" Andre nodded. "I've actually been seeing someone else for a little while now. I'll bring her over soon so you can meet her." Valeria's face brightened instantly. "Now that's what I've been waiting to hear." She couldn't hide her excitement. "If you'd listened to me from the beginning, we could have avoided all these arguments." Andre paused before continuing. "This time I made sure she meets every requirement you've ever asked for." "Oh." Valeria looked intrigued. "She's from a wealthy family, grew up in the city, spent years overseas, and she's exactly the kind of woman you've always wanted me to date." Valeria beamed with satisfaction. "See? That's what I'm talking about. If you choose someone like that, I have no reason to object." Unlike Alicia, she shook her head. "That girl grew up in a small town and she's far too stubborn. She doesn't have the qualities a woman should have." Valeria continued talking for several more minutes before Andre finally interrupted her. His expression turned serious. "Well, Mom, since I've followed your advice, I'd appreciate it if you stopped interfering in my personal life from now on." Valeria was in such a good mood that she barely thought about it. "Fine. If you've chosen the right person, I won't get involved. Just bring her here so I can meet her." Andre nodded and hid a smile. Everything was going exactly according to plan. A few days later, Andre brought his new girlfriend over to meet Valeria. Since early that morning, Valeria had been busy preparing food and fruit, eagerly waiting for their arrival. It was nearly noon before Andre finally showed up. The woman beside him was none other than Imani, Omari's younger sister. This time, Imani appeared in an outfit that was impossible to ignore. Her hair was dyed bright red, her makeup was heavy, and she wore bright red lipstick. The moment Valeria saw her, she was stunned. Still, because Imani came from a wealthy city family, Valeria forced herself to smile. "Why are you two so late?" Before Andre could answer, Imani spoke first. "We were out late last night, so I overslept this morning." Valeria frowned slightly. The young woman Andre called his girlfriend looked flashy and over the top. She didn't even greet her properly when she entered the house. Even so, Valeria politely invited her inside. As soon as Imani sat down, she grabbed fruit from the table and started eating. Valeria was already uncomfortable. Noticing it, Imani quickly said, "Please don't mind me. I've lived overseas for so long that I'm not really used to things here." Holding back her irritation, Valeria asked, "How long have you been back?" 3 months, Imani replied while continuing to eat. "My parents are business owners. I met Andre shortly after I returned." Before Valeria could ask another question, Imani continued, "My father already said that when Andre and I get married, he'll have to move in with my family. I'm not moving anywhere. If Andre can handle my father's business, we'll probably take him overseas with us too." Valeria looked startled and quickly interrupted. "Hold on. Isn't it too early to be talking about marriage?" "Not really," Imani replied. "Besides, my family has expectations. Before the wedding, we'd want a pretty significant financial contribution from the groom's side." Valeria stared at her in disbelief. Just then, Imani's phone rang. She deliberately turned on the speaker. Her friends were calling, urging her to come join them for drinks. "I'll be there soon," Imani said cheerfully before hanging up. Then she turned to Andre. "Come with me. Everyone's waiting." Andre glanced at Valeria before continuing the act. "Who are you meeting? Is it the same group as before?" "Yeah," Imani replied. "They're all there." Andre frowned. "Wasn't one of those guys in prison?" Imani laughed. "He got out already. Come on, let's go." Valeria immediately grew anxious. "Why don't you two stay and have lunch first? I've already prepared everything." Imani waved her hand. "No, thanks. I'm not used to eating at home. Maybe another day. We can just go out to a restaurant." She reached for Andre's arm and tried to pull him toward the door. This time, Valeria stopped them. "Andre has something he needs to help me with today. You should go by yourself." Then she looked at her son. "Andre, go help her get a taxi." Andre silently walked Imani outside. The moment he returned, Valeria started scolding him. "What were you thinking bringing a girl like that into this house?" Andre shrugged. "I picked someone who matches your standards. She's from a wealthy family. She's from the city. She's attractive. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? Who would accept someone with a personality like that?" Valeria snapped. Andre shrugged. "I picked someone based on your requirements. She's wealthy. She's from the city. She's tall. She's attractive. What else could you ask for? Who would accept someone with a personality like that?" Valeria shot back. Before Andre could respond, she raised her voice again. "You brought her here because I wouldn't accept Alicia, didn't you? You're trying to get back at me." Andre answered calmly. "I'm not trying to go against you. I listened to what you wanted. I brought Alicia here and you wouldn't accept her, so I found someone else who fits all your standards." "You're clearly trying to drive me crazy," Valeria snapped. Andre finally raised his voice. "What do you want from me? The only things you've cared about are money, status, and whether someone comes from the city. You've never cared about a person's character. And you already told me you wouldn't interfere if I chose someone who met your standards. So don't interfere now. I've made up my mind. I'm breaking up with Alicia and marrying Imani." Valeria continued shouting, but Andre had already walked away. That night, he didn't go home. Instead, he stayed at Alicia's house. Valeria called several times, but he ignored every call. It wasn't until late that night that he finally answered. "Where are you?" Valeria demanded. "Don't tell me you're out with that girl again." Andre glanced at Alicia and smiled before answering calmly. "Yes, I'm with Imani. Andre!" Valeria nearly shouted. "Why are you spending time with her? Are you hanging around those people she calls friends now too?" "I'm an adult, Mom. First you tried to control who I date. Now you're trying to control who I'm friends with?" Without waiting for an answer, Andre ended the call. He wrapped an arm around Alicia and went to sleep. Meanwhile, Valeria spent the entire night worrying. The next morning, Andre returned home. Valeria immediately started telling him to stay away from Imani. Andre didn't argue. He simply went upstairs and shut himself in his room. He knew exactly what his mother was trying to do. She wanted to pressure him every day until he gave up on Imani, just like she had pressured him to give up Alicia. But this time was different. The more Valeria tried to interfere, the more determined he became to marry the woman he loved. Andre stayed in his room until evening. No matter how many times Valeria called him down for dinner, he refused to come out. When Raymond finally got home, Andre walked downstairs carrying a stack of documents. Sitting across from his parents, he placed the papers on the table. "I've decided to take a job overseas," he said. "These are the documents I need you to sign." Raymond stared at him in shock. Valeria immediately grabbed the papers and looked through them. "You made this decision without even talking to us?" she demanded. Andre let out a tired sigh. "Everything I do gets criticized. You interfere with my relationships, my friendships, and now you're trying to interfere with my career too." "You're not going overseas," Valeria said firmly. "You're our only son. You'll be gone for years. Do you have any idea what could happen?" Andre shook his head. "I already told you. If you keep interfering in my personal life, then I'd rather leave. I can focus on work, save money, and move on." Raymond spoke more gently. "Our family isn't struggling financially. Why put yourself through that?" "This isn't about money," Andre replied. "I'm tired of being told how to live. If things stay like this, I'll just leave with Amani and start over somewhere else." Valeria's eyes widened. "Leave with Amani?" For the first time, her tone softened. "Andre, calm down. I'm only trying to look out for you. There's no need to rush into something like this. Let's take things one step at a time." After convincing Andre to put his plans on hold for the moment, Valeria watched him head back upstairs without another word. Over the next several days, Andre remained patient and waited. Valeria, on the other hand, could barely sit still. The thought of her son leaving with Amani weighed on her constantly. There was no denying that Amani came from a wealthy family, but Valeria couldn't accept her personality or lifestyle. More importantly, she was afraid Andre might actually leave Charlotte and follow Amani somewhere far away. If that happened, seeing her son would become much more difficult. One morning, Alicia came by the house looking for Andre. When Valeria opened the door, her attitude was noticeably different from before. "Good morning, Miss Valeria," Alicia said politely before looking past her into the house. "Is Andre home?" This time, Valeria didn't respond with her usual coldness. "Come in. He's upstairs. Please go get him for me. He's been hiding in that room for days." Alicia smiled and thanked her before heading upstairs. A short while later, she came back down with Andre, and Valeria looked visibly relieved. But before she could enjoy the moment, a loud voice suddenly came from outside. "Andre, are you home?" Valeria immediately frowned. She didn't like hearing Amani's voice. Before anyone could get to the door, Amani pushed her way inside. The moment she saw Andre, she marched straight toward him. "Where have you been? Why haven't you called me?" Then she noticed Alicia standing nearby. "Who is she?" Before Andre could answer, Valeria stepped forward. "You probably don't know this, but that's Alicia. She's been Andre's girlfriend for years." Amani's eyes widened. "What? You already have a girlfriend?" She turned toward Andre. "Then why were you flirting with me?" Andre remained silent. Amani pointed at Alicia. "So who are you choosing, me or her? I can give you a comfortable life overseas. What does she have?" Amani continued talking without paying any attention to Valeria. Ever since she arrived, she had practically ignored everything Valeria said. That alone irritated Valeria. Seeing her son being cornered, she finally stepped in. "Our family has already discussed marriage plans with Alicia." Both Andre and Alicia looked at her in surprise. Valeria ignored them and continued speaking to Amani. "So let me make this clear. Whatever is going on between you and Andre should remain a friendship and nothing more." Amani glared at Andre. "Unbelievable. You were playing games with me this whole time?" Without waiting for an answer, she stormed out of the house. The second she was gone, Andre grinned and looked at his mother. "So you're finally accepting Alicia now?" Valeria glared at him. "You're nothing but trouble." Then she turned and walked back inside. Even though she refused to admit it directly, Andre understood what she meant. Compared to Amani, Alicia suddenly seemed like the better choice. At least Alicia was someone Valeria could live with. The idea of Andre following Amani somewhere overseas frightened her far more. In the end, Valeria reluctantly accepted the relationship, even if she still wasn't completely happy about it. That afternoon, the group gathered again at a coffee shop. Omari laughed loudly and looked at his sister. "I have to give you credit. I never thought you'd come up with something this good." Amani laughed. "So thanks to me, these two are finally getting married, right? I better get invited to the wedding. Everyone burst out laughing and congratulated Andre and Alicia. The truth was finally out. Ever since that first meeting at the coffee shop, the group had been trying to figure out a way to make Valeria accept the relationship. Imani had agreed to play the role of Andre's new girlfriend to help make it happen. Fortunately, they understood Valeria's personality well enough to know exactly how she would react. Imani created the image of a woman who matched every requirement Valeria had ever demanded. Then Andre added pressure by pretending he was serious about the relationship. As a result, Valeria was finally forced to compare Imani and Alicia side by side. With that comparison in front of her, she began seeing Alicia differently. Even so, Imani looked at Alicia and offered a warning. To be honest, I don't think Miss Valeria fully accepts this yet. You should think carefully before marrying into that family. Andre quickly cut in before Alicia could start worrying. You're overthinking it. My mom says harsh things sometimes, but she's not a bad person. Alicia smiled. It's okay. As long as she's willing to let us get married, that's enough for me. As for life after the wedding, I'm not too worried. I'm not exactly easy to push around. The entire table erupted with laughter again. They raised their drinks and celebrated the success of their plan. With Valeria finally giving her approval, Andre wanted to move forward with the wedding as soon as possible so he could settle down and focus on building his future. Valeria had already agreed, so there was little she could say now. Even so, she still wasn't completely happy with the outcome. Around noon, Alicia came over for lunch. With the wedding approaching, she had been spending more time at Andre's house. While she was setting dishes on the table, Valeria suddenly spoke up. I was wondering, how do people handle wedding traditions where you're from? Then again, in a small town, I doubt people spend very much on weddings anyway. The first part sounded harmless enough, but the second part clearly carried another meaning. Before Alicia could respond, Andre stepped in, already embarrassed. Mom, this isn't the time for that. Let's just eat. Sitting beside him, Raymond looked uncomfortable as well. Just sit down and have lunch, he said. These things should be discussed carefully. You don't need to be so blunt about it. Valeria immediately became irritated. That's funny. I was talking to Alicia, not either of you. Why are both of you jumping in? Then she looked at Alicia. Besides, she's practically family already. What's wrong with asking? The meaning behind Valeria's words was obvious. She wanted Alicia to answer. Unfortunately for Valeria, Alicia wasn't the type to stay quiet. Dad, it's fine, Alicia said calmly. Then she turned to Valeria. Honestly, I think it's best to follow the local customs here. There's no need to worry about the traditions where I grew up. Valeria was about to argue. Deep down, she still wasn't happy about spending a large amount of money on the wedding because she continued to think of Alicia as a girl from a small town. Before she could speak, Alicia continued. Money can always be earned again. What matters is protecting the family's reputation. Imagine people finding out that a family from Charlotte held a wedding and barely contributed anything. They'd be talking about it for years. Valeria immediately fell silent. The comment had struck exactly where it hurt most. She cared deeply about appearances and hated the thought of becoming the subject of gossip. The rest of the meal continued in a noticeably tense atmosphere. After lunch, Alicia headed home. The moment she left, Valeria exploded. Just look at the kind of woman you've chosen. We aren't even married yet, and she argues with everything I say. Andre lowered his voice. Mom, calm down. Alicia didn't say anything disrespectful. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Raymond finally lost patience. You need to be reasonable. You have a daughter, too. How would you feel if Keisha got married and her future in-laws kept looking for ways to cut corners on the wedding expenses? Valeria immediately became defensive. That's not what I was doing. I was just asking questions so we could discuss the wedding. Raymond shook his head. I've lived with you long enough to know exactly what you meant. The way you think comes out in the way you speak. It's a good thing you said those things to Alicia. If you'd said them to her parents, where would we be right now? Valeria couldn't argue with that. For the first time all afternoon, she sat quietly. Being criticized by all three of them left her feeling frustrated and embarrassed. A few days later, Andre's family traveled to Greenville to visit Alicia's family. Until then, Andre had been the only one who had ever visited her home. This was Valeria and Raymond's first trip there. During the drive, Valeria kept imagining what life in a small town would look like. She assumed it would be outdated and far less developed than Charlotte. The more she thought about it, the less excited she became about the visit. But the reality was completely different from what she had expected. Alicia's family home was large and impressive. Even though Greenville was a smaller city, the roads, neighborhoods, and homes looked every bit as modern as those in Charlotte. In fact, Alicia's house was far larger and more spacious than the home Valeria's family lived in. Samuel and Ruth welcomed everyone warmly and prepared a generous meal for their guests. After lunch, both families sat down together to discuss the wedding. Samuel smiled and spoke first. "Now that we're all here, I'd like to talk about the wedding plans. My family has spent most of our lives farming and raising livestock, so we don't have a great deal to offer the kids." Hearing that, Valeria secretly felt relieved. It sounded exactly like what she had expected. But before she could finish that thought, Samuel continued. "We'd like to give them some gold as a wedding gift, and if they decide to start a business or need financial support later on, we'll help however we can." Valeria froze. She hadn't expected that at all. Trying to hide her embarrassment, she forced a smile. Well, whatever parents can give is already a blessing. From that point on, the conversation felt noticeably more awkward for her. She had never imagined that Alicia's family would be so financially comfortable. On the drive back to Charlotte, Raymond couldn't hold back anymore. "See? This is exactly why I told you to stop making assumptions about people." Valeria stayed quiet. Raymond continued. "You were questioning Alicia about wedding expenses the other day. It's a good thing she handled it politely. Otherwise, you would have been the one left embarrassed." This time, Valeria knew she was wrong. She couldn't come up with a single response. Before long, the wedding day arrived. After what had happened during the visit to Alicia's family, Valeria no longer dared to cut corners or keep the wedding simple. It was also at the wedding that Alicia finally met her future sister-in-law, Keisha. Andre had talked about his younger sister many times before, and Alicia already knew Keisha had a sharp personality. Even so, she hadn't expected it to be this obvious. Throughout the wedding, Alicia caught Keisha throwing sideways glances at her more than once. Later, she learned the reason. Valeria had spent months complaining about Alicia to Keisha, and those stories had shaped Keisha's opinion long before they ever met. During the wedding reception, Alicia's parents gave the newlyweds generous gifts, including gold and cash. Seeing what the bride's family contributed, Andre's side felt pressured to match it as best they could. Alicia knew Valeria had borrowed money to cover many of the wedding expenses. She understood the situation and chose not to say anything during the celebration. That night, after the wedding ended, Alicia carried a box filled with wedding gift envelopes and walked to Valeria's room. Hearing a knock at the door, Valeria opened it and found Alicia standing outside, holding the box. "It's late. Why aren't you asleep?" Even though she had agreed to the marriage, Valeria still hadn't fully accepted Alicia, and it showed in her tone. Alicia remained calm and held out the box. "This is all the wedding gift money Andre and I received. Please take it and use it to cover the wedding expenses." Valeria looked surprised. A moment earlier, she had been cold toward Alicia, and now she suddenly felt a little uncomfortable about it. After a brief pause, she accepted the box. "Thank you." Alicia smiled, said goodnight, and returned to her room. After closing the door, Valeria looked at the box for a long moment. She felt somewhat satisfied by Alicia's gesture, but it still wasn't enough to completely change her opinion of her new daughter-in-law. The first few weeks of married life seemed peaceful on the surface, but things were far from peaceful inside the house. Valeria still hadn't gotten over the fact that she had been pressured into accepting Andre and Alicia's marriage. Every weekday, Andre and Alicia went to work as usual. When they got home, Alicia took care of cooking and most of the household chores. The truth was, Alicia knew very well that Valeria rarely did much during the day. Most of her time was spent walking around the neighborhood and chatting with friends her age. The household work was usually left untouched until Alicia came home. Even so, Alicia never complained. As a daughter-in-law, she felt those responsibilities were hers to handle. Fortunately, Andre always tried to help whenever he could, which made things much easier for her. Alicia knew Valeria wasn't happy seeing her son help with housework, but Valeria also knew that if she complained too much, Raymond would immediately take Alicia's side and criticize her. Alicia didn't pay much attention to those things. As long as she and Andre were happy together, Valeria's disapproving looks didn't bother her. Everything continued normally until one Sunday morning. Alicia went to the local market to buy groceries. Since she spent most of her time working and rarely went out, very few people in the area actually recognized her. That morning, she was also wearing a mask, making it even harder for anyone to identify her. As she walked through the market, she overheard several women chatting nearby. At first, she paid no attention. Then she heard her own name. "Do you know Valeria's daughter-in-law?" one woman asked. Immediately, several voices joined the conversation. "You mean Alicia? The one Andre insisted on marrying?" Alicia slowed her steps and listened. "That's the one," the woman continued. "Valeria used to complain about her all the time. She said that girl only cares about makeup, clothes, and looking pretty. According to her, Alicia never helps around the house." Another woman quickly agreed. "I've heard that too. Every time I talked to Valeria, she'd say Alicia came home from work and spent the rest of the evening watching TV while Valeria did all the cooking and cleaning." A third woman joined in. "Valeria also told me Alicia keeps all her salary for herself. She never contributes anything to household expenses. And if dinner isn't exactly what she wants, she complains and refuses to eat." The group reacted with loud surprise. "Seriously? What kind of daughter-in-law does that? No wonder Valeria didn't want her son marrying her. Valeria isn't exactly an easy person either. If she's putting up with Alicia, that girl must be something else." The conversation continued, but Alicia had heard enough. She quietly walked away and finished shopping. On the way home, she couldn't shake the frustration building inside her. She knew Valeria didn't like her, but she had never imagined her mother-in-law was telling such outrageous lies behind her back. Every day, Alicia handled the cooking, cleaning, and household responsibilities. Every month when she got paid, she gave money to Valeria to help with groceries and household expenses. She even paid utility bills and regularly bought supplements and medicine for both Raymond and Valeria. Yet those were the stories being told about her. The more she thought about it, the more upset she became. The frustration stayed with Alicia for the rest of the morning. Andre could tell something was bothering her, but every time he asked what was wrong, she avoided the question. As a result, he had no idea what had happened or how to help her. Alicia spent hours thinking about it. She tried convincing herself to let it go and keep the peace, but no matter how hard she tried, the anger wouldn't fade. She had always been the kind of person who lived honestly and treated people fairly. She never went out of her way to hurt anyone, and because of that, she struggled to stay silent when faced with something she knew was wrong. The more she kept everything bottled up inside, the worse she felt. By noon, Alicia had made up her mind. She wasn't going to ignore this. She needed to get to the bottom of it once and for all. At the same time, she knew Valeria well enough to understand that confronting her directly wouldn't accomplish anything. If she simply accused her of spreading rumors, Valeria would deny everything and probably find a way to blame Alicia instead. Alicia spent the afternoon thinking carefully about what to do. Eventually, she came up with a plan. The more she thought about it, the more satisfied she felt. For the first time that day, the frustration in her chest began to ease. Feeling much better, Alicia lay down for a nap and slept peacefully, ready for what she planned to do later. That Sunday afternoon, Alicia deliberately got out of bed much later than usual. Even after she woke up, she spent her time doing a few small things in the yard instead of taking care of the household chores. Valeria noticed right away, but she didn't say anything. In her mind, all the housework belonged to Alicia anyway. If Alicia kept putting it off, Valeria would simply have another reason to criticize her later. As the afternoon passed and dinner time drew closer, Alicia still hadn't touched the cooking. Curious, Valeria stepped outside to see what was going on. There she found Alicia stretched out on the couch watching television and laughing at something on the screen. Valeria was furious and was about to scold her when the doorbell suddenly rang. Alicia immediately got up and went to answer it. A few moments later, Valeria saw Mrs. Horan, one of the neighbors, walking inside with Alicia. Before Valeria could ask what was happening, Mrs. Horan smiled and greeted her. "Hello, Valeria. Alicia invited me over for dinner this afternoon. I thought maybe your family was celebrating something." Valeria froze. Before she could respond, Alicia quickly said, "Nothing special, Mrs. Horan. We've been neighbors for years, so I thought it would be nice to share a meal together." Since the invitation had already been made, Valeria had no choice but to force a smile and welcome the guest inside. Refusing now would only embarrass herself. She poured Mrs. Horan a glass of water before turning toward Alicia. "Go start preparing dinner. We can't invite someone over and not feed them. Alicia looked genuinely surprised. Why would I cook? Valeria frowned. What do you mean? Alicia answered calmly. I thought you told everyone around the neighborhood that I spend all day lying around watching TV while you do all the work in this house. At that exact moment, Andre and Raymond returned from their walk. Mrs. Horan's shocked expression made the situation even more uncomfortable. Valeria swallowed her anger and quietly walked into the kitchen. Ever since Alicia married into the family, Valeria had hardly cooked at all. Now, standing alone in the kitchen, she struggled through every step. By the time dinner was ready, she was exhausted. Because she rushed through everything, none of the dishes turned out particularly well. Raymond sat down at the table feeling embarrassed. Guests rarely visited their home, and this was certainly not the kind of meal he wanted to serve. Looking toward Alicia, he asked, "Why would you let things get this far when we have company?" Alicia answered calmly, "I didn't cook any of it. Valeria did." Andre looked uncomfortable and tried to smooth things over. "Alicia, even if you didn't help, you don't have to say it like that." Alicia remained unfazed. "Valeria has been telling people that I never do any work around here. She says I don't contribute money to the household and that she has to take care of everything herself. If I keep doing all the work, wouldn't that make her look like a liar in front of Mrs. Horan?" The color drained from Valeria's face. She glanced at Raymond and saw the anger in his eyes. Andre finally understood what this was all about and wisely chose to stay quiet. Because they had a guest present, Raymond said nothing and simply invited everyone to eat. Mrs. Horan had already started putting the pieces together. The way she looked at Valeria was noticeably different now. Even so, she politely picked up her chopsticks and began eating. The moment she tasted the meat, her eyes widened. It was unbearably salty. Alicia nearly laughed but managed to hold it in. Raymond felt even more embarrassed. Throughout their marriage, Valeria had never been known for her cooking. There had always been something wrong with her meals. Sometimes the soup was too salty. Other times the rice was undercooked. Even her braised dishes often turned out badly. Whenever the family hosted guests, Raymond usually ordered food from outside rather than risk serving one of Valeria's meals. Things had improved slightly over the years, but not by much. Ever since Alicia joined the family, mealtimes had become far better because Alicia was a talented cook. Mrs. Horan forced herself to finish a few bites before politely excusing herself and leaving early. The food wasn't good, and the atmosphere was even worse. As soon as Mrs. Horan left, Raymond's patience ran out. He turned toward Valeria and demanded, "What exactly have you been telling people about Alicia?" Valeria knew Raymond's temper well enough to recognize when he was truly angry, so she immediately tried to defend herself. "I didn't say anything. Why are you taking Alicia's word for it?" The moment she finished speaking, Alicia pulled out her phone and played a recording. The voices from the market that morning filled the room. Every word was clear. Raymond's face darkened as he listened. Valeria sat frozen in her chair. "What are you doing, Valeria?" Raymond snapped. "Do you want to tear this family apart before you're satisfied?" Valeria opened her mouth to explain herself, but no excuse came to mind. The evidence was right there. There was nothing she could deny. Alicia finally spoke. "If you don't like something about me, you can say it directly to me. But telling people things that aren't true isn't right." Then she continued calmly, "If I keep doing everything the way I always have, people will realize you weren't telling the truth. That would only make you look bad. So I thought it would be better if you became the kind and hardworking mother-in-law you've been describing to everyone. I don't mind being the lazy daughter-in-law people talk about." Valeria immediately realized Alicia had planned everything from the beginning. Any argument now would only make her situation worse. Her tone softened. "I don't dislike you. I only wanted you to become a better person." Raymond shook his head in frustration. "Stop making excuses. You have too much free time, and that's the problem. From now on, spend more time helping around the house instead of sitting around talking about other people's lives." Then he turned toward Alicia. "You keep handling the cooking. I can't eat your mother-in-law's food." After that, Raymond told everyone to go about their evening. The entire situation had given him a headache. Valeria remained upset, but there was little she could do. Before going to her room, she shot Alicia a glare. Alicia simply stood there with a faint smile on her face. Andre knew exactly what had happened. He understood why Alicia had been upset all morning, and he knew this entire situation had been her way of settling the score. Even so, He didn't think she had done anything unreasonable, so he stayed out of it. It was the first time he had ever seen someone put his mother at a disadvantage. Valeria had always been known as the toughest person in the family. The more Andre thought about it, the harder it was not to laugh. Over the following weeks, Valeria's attitude improved somewhat. She stopped gossiping around the neighborhood as much as before. After Mrs. Horan learned the truth, word gradually spread among the neighbors about what had really happened. Since the two houses were right next to each other, Mrs. Horan had heard Raymond and Valeria's argument clearly that evening. Before long, people began talking about Valeria instead. Embarrassed by the situation, she spent much more time inside the house and avoided many of her usual conversations with the neighbors. Just when it seemed like things might finally settle down, a new problem arrived. Keisha had graduated from college and moved back home because she still hadn't found a job. Calling her Alicia's nightmare wasn't entirely unfair. Keisha was at an age where emotions often came before reason, and she wasn't exactly easy to get along with. Alicia had never felt particularly close to her sister-in-law, and it didn't take long to notice that the feeling went both ways. Alicia suspected Valeria had spent plenty of time complaining about her to Keisha, because from the very beginning, Keisha's attitude had been cold and distant. Since she recognized that immediately, Alicia decided the best approach was to remain polite while keeping her distance. Most days, it wasn't difficult. She spent all day at work and usually only saw Keisha in the evenings. The last thing Alicia wanted was another unnecessary conflict. Work already gave her enough stress. Unfortunately, avoiding trouble turned out to be harder than she expected. Even though Alicia tried her best to stay away from petty arguments, Keisha seemed determined to make her dislike obvious. Keisha was 23 years old and had a college degree, but years of being spoiled had left her unprepared for reality. She had never taken school particularly seriously, and her grades had been average at best. As a result, finding a good job wasn't easy. To make matters worse, Keisha had a habit of looking down on every opportunity that came her way. One job required too much work. Another didn't pay enough. While most of her friends had already started their careers, Keisha remained unemployed. With nothing productive to do, she spent her days relying on her parents. She avoided housework, acted like a princess, and constantly demanded that Valeria buy things for her. The irony was that much of that money ultimately came from Alicia and Andre. Raymond and Valeria lived mostly on their retirement income, which wasn't enough to support Keisha's spending habits. Alicia knew exactly where the money was coming from, but she chose not to make an issue out of it. Once she handed money over for household expenses, she considered it no longer hers. As long as nobody deliberately made life difficult for her, she was willing to let many things slide. Unfortunately, Keisha didn't seem interested in showing the same consideration. From the day she moved back home, Alicia noticed that Keisha never lifted a finger to help with anything. At first, Alicia didn't pay much attention. She assumed Keisha deserved a little time to rest after finishing college. But more than a month passed, and nothing changed. Every evening, Alicia came home and handled most of the cooking. Since Raymond's confrontation with Valeria, Valeria had started helping out more around the house, but Alicia still felt that Keisha should be contributing as well. Keisha was a grown woman with no job and very few responsibilities. Yet she spent her days scrolling through her phone, chatting with friends, and finding excuses to avoid helping. Worse, she often ordered Alicia around and complained about one thing after another. One evening after dinner, Keisha stood up from the table and headed toward the living room. Before leaving, she casually called out, "Make me a plate of fruit later." Normally, Alicia would have ignored it. This time, she didn't. "Keisha, wait a second." Keisha stopped and looked back. Alicia continued, "First, you're the youngest person in this house. Second, you're an adult now. You don't have a job, and you spend most of your time at home. Don't you think it's time you started helping your mother with some of the housework? I've never seen you do anything since you got back." Keisha looked genuinely surprised. Nobody had spoken to her that way before. She had always been spoiled and protected by her family. Without hesitation, she fired back, "I've never had to do any of that before. Who do you think you are, telling me what to do?" Andre sensed the tension immediately and tried to calm things down. "Come on, Keisha. She's right. It's not that much work. I've noticed you asking Alicia to do things for you all the time." Keisha crossed her arms. "She's the daughter-in-law. That's her job." She turned as if to leave, but Alicia stood up. "If that's how you feel, Then starting tomorrow, you can go get a job and bring money into this house. I'll stay home and handle all the chores. Does that sound fair? Keisha opened her mouth but couldn't think of a response. Seeing her daughter run out of arguments, Valeria immediately stepped in. That's enough. Stop arguing. I'll take care of those things myself, Alicia responded right away. You shouldn't keep defending her like this. One day she'll get married, and she might not be lucky enough to find in-laws as patient and understanding as I am. Valeria knew exactly what Alicia was implying, but with Raymond sitting there, she couldn't say much. Raymond had been watching the entire exchange. Finally, he spoke up. Starting tomorrow, Keisha, you're going to help your mother with the housework. You're a grown woman now. You can't spend all day wandering around without any responsibilities. Once Raymond made a decision, Keisha had no choice but to agree, though she was clearly unhappy about it. After dinner, Alicia carried the dishes into the kitchen before heading upstairs. As she passed through the living room, she looked at Keisha and said, I've already put the dishes in the sink. Go wash them. Keisha was about to argue, but the moment she saw Raymond looking at her, she swallowed her words and walked into the kitchen. A few minutes later, the sound of plates and bowls banging against each other echoed through the house. It was obvious Keisha was taking out her frustration on the dishes. Sitting in the living room, Raymond grew increasingly irritated. He turned toward Valeria. You need to start teaching your daughter some responsibility. She's already an adult. If she can't handle a few household chores, what do you think will happen when she gets married? Valeria tried to defend her daughter, but Raymond cut her off before she could finish. Look at Alicia. She's hardworking, respectful, has a good job, and still takes care of the house. Instead of criticizing her all the time, maybe you should pay more attention to your own daughter. Every word Raymond said was loud enough for Keisha to hear from the kitchen. Being forced to wash dishes was already humiliating enough in her mind. Hearing her father compare her to Alicia only made things worse. The resentment she already felt toward her sister-in-law grew even stronger. Time continued to pass, but Keisha still couldn't find a job. Andre had asked several friends for help and even managed to get her resume submitted to a few larger companies. Unfortunately, there was only so much other people could do. Keisha's qualifications weren't particularly impressive, and even when companies were willing to give her a chance, she wasn't able to secure a position. As a result, the job search became another source of pressure. Every day she remained at home was another day Raymond reminded her that she needed to start working and supporting herself. That morning, Raymond once again brought up the subject of finding a job. He wanted Keisha to lower her expectations and accept a position with a modest salary if necessary. As usual, the conversation quickly turned into another argument between father and daughter. Keisha stormed away in frustration. Just then, Alicia received a phone call. On the other end was Danielle, her younger sister. Danielle excitedly shared the news that she had graduated and found a good job. Keisha and Danielle knew each other because they had attended the same university and even studied in the same class. The two were the same age, but their paths had been very different. Danielle had always been a strong student and had earned scholarships year after year. She had only delayed her job search because she was helping her family for a while after graduation. Now that she had returned to Charlotte, her impressive resume had helped her land a position without much difficulty. Keisha happened to overhear the conversation. Already irritated after arguing with Raymond, she couldn't resist making a sarcastic comment as she walked past Alicia. Wow, people from small towns really are something. They'll cling to any low-paying job they can find just to stay in the city. Alicia heard every word clearly, but she acted as though she hadn't. Without responding, she simply walked away. Being ignored only embarrassed Keisha further and made her even more irritated. Alicia wasn't planning to tolerate her sister-in-law's behavior forever. She had always been patient, but there was a limit to everything. That evening, while the family was having dinner together, Alicia finally spoke up. Have you found a job yet, Keisha? My company has an opening. If you're interested, I can submit your resume. Keisha immediately responded in her usual dismissive tone. How much does it pay? How many hours would I have to work? If the salary is too low, I'm not interested, Alicia shrugged. I was only asking whether you wanted help. If you're holding out for something better, then keep looking. Sitting nearby, Raymond joined the conversation. What are you being picky about now? If your sister-in-law can do the job, then so can you. Stop waiting around for the perfect opportunity. Keisha looked ready to argue, but Valeria cut in first. Just take the job for now. Your sister-in-law has worked there for years. With your degree, you'll probably move into a management position eventually. Alicia quietly smiled to herself. Once Keisha agreed to let her submit the resume, Alicia already knew exactly what she was going to do next. The next day, Alicia brought Keisha's resume to work. She went straight to the Human Resources Department and handed it over personally. "Please schedule an interview for this applicant today," she said. The HR employee accepted the resume and smiled. "What position would you like her considered for?" Alicia thought for a moment before answering. "Junior Accounting Associate." The employee nodded and added Keisha's name to the interview list. Before leaving, Alicia turned back and added one more instruction. "And one more thing. Don't let anyone know she's related to me. Also, don't tell her what position I hold in this company." After giving those instructions, Alicia left. Thinking about Valeria's comments from the night before only made her smile. She couldn't help wondering how Valeria and Keisha would react if they ever learned that she wasn't an ordinary employee but a department manager at a large company. The night before, Andre had wanted to tell his mother the truth, but Alicia had stopped him. The two of them had already agreed to use this opportunity to teach Keisha an important lesson. Alicia didn't hate her sister-in-law. She simply believed Keisha needed to grow up before life taught her the lesson in a much harsher way. That evening, Keisha announced that she had been hired. Even so, she didn't sound particularly happy. "I got the job, but it's only an accounting position." Valeria clicked her tongue. "Your sister-in-law is just a regular employee. How much influence could she possibly have? Take the job for now and find something better later." Throughout the entire conversation, Alicia remained silent. The next morning, Keisha arrived at the company and officially started work. She wasn't enthusiastic about the position, but she forced herself to smile and get through the day. On her first day, her team leader assigned her simple filing and document sorting tasks. Keisha completed them, but she wasn't pleased. That night, she immediately complained to Valeria. "I went to college and graduated with a degree, and now they're having me sort paperwork all day." Valeria quickly sided with her daughter. Alicia sat nearby, quietly listening to the conversation. The following morning, Keisha received a new assignment. Shortly after she sat down, her team leader walked over and handed her a stack of documents. "Please organize these numbers into a report for me." Keisha accepted the task enthusiastically. This, she thought, was the kind of work a college graduate should be doing. She eagerly got started. The excitement didn't last long. After staring at the documents for a while, she realized she had no idea how to proceed. The material looked familiar, but because she had never taken her studies seriously, the numbers in front of her quickly became overwhelming. Fortunately, the report wasn't due that day. Unfortunately, that didn't make the task any easier. Keisha had always been quick to look for shortcuts. Rather than struggle through the assignment herself, she decided to take the work home and ask Andre for help. The problem was that Andre worked late that evening. Keisha waited anxiously. The report was due soon, and her brother still hadn't come home. When she noticed Alicia working quietly nearby, she walked over and asked bluntly, "Do you know how to do this?" Alicia glanced at the report. It was the very assignment she had arranged for Keisha that morning. She had expected the work to challenge Keisha eventually. She hadn't expected it to happen this quickly. Alicia shook her head. "No, I don't," Keisha smirked. "Right, I forgot. You never had much education, so I don't know why I even asked." Alicia looked up. "Then how is it that someone with a college degree can't do it either?" Keisha immediately fell silent. She knew Alicia was mocking her, but she couldn't think of a response. Hours later, Andre finally returned home. Keisha immediately begged him to help. He glanced toward Alicia and knew she wouldn't approve, but Keisha kept insisting. Eventually, he gave in. After working all day, the last thing Andre wanted was more paperwork, but he sat down and started helping anyway. A little later, Alicia brought him a glass of warm water. Andre accepted it with a smile. He already knew what she was thinking. "I know you don't like me doing this," he said, "but it's her first job. I just want to help her get through the beginning." Alicia didn't want to argue. She simply asked, "Was any of this difficult?" Andre shook his head. "Not really." "Then why can't Keisha do it?" Alicia replied. "She has a degree too." Andre knew she had a point. He had always known his sister never took school seriously. Seeing her struggle with basic tasks was embarrassing, but he couldn't deny the truth. After a short conversation, Alicia went to bed while Andre stayed up finishing the report. The next morning, Keisha confidently turned in the report. Her team leader was impressed by how organized and professional it looked. Later, the report was passed along to Alicia, and the team leader couldn't stop praising Keisha's work. Of course, Alicia knew exactly who had actually completed it. Even so, she had no intention of letting Keisha continue taking the easy way out. This time, through the team leader, Alicia assigned Keisha to inventory management in the records storage area. Keisha hated the assignment. The storage room was hot, dusty, and physically exhausting. But she knew better than to complain. If she rejected this task, she might be given another report to complete on her own, and that would be even worse. Just as Alicia expected, the work left Keisha completely exhausted. That evening, Keisha returned home and immediately started complaining to Valeria about how difficult her day had been. While she was still venting, Andre finally interrupted. "You should spend more time reviewing what you learned in school. Don't expect me to keep doing your work for you like I did yesterday." Keisha rolled her eyes. "You make it sound like helping me once was some huge sacrifice. Or did Alicia put those ideas in your head?" Andre glanced at Alicia, who remained completely silent. Then he turned back to his sister. "No. I'm saying you need to focus on your own responsibilities. I can't do your job for you forever. When payday comes, I'm pretty sure you won't be asking me to collect your paycheck for you." Keisha looked ready to argue, but Valeria quickly stepped in. "Andre, she's only been working for a short time. If you and Alicia can help her, then help her. You've both had proper educations. Those tasks are easy for you. And if Alicia can't help with office work, she could at least help with some of Keisha's chores at home." Alicia had listened quietly until then, but that comment pushed her patience too far. "You keep saying Andre can do those things because he's educated. Then why can't Keisha do them? She went to college too, didn't she?" Valeria froze. She clearly hadn't expected Alicia to answer so directly. The room fell silent until Raymond finally lost his patience. "Enough. All this noise over one job. Keisha, from now on, your work is your responsibility. Stop asking other people to do it for you. Andre and Alicia have their own jobs to worry about." With that, Raymond stood up and walked away. Andre followed Alicia upstairs soon afterward. Lying in bed that night, Alicia kept thinking. She was starting to realize that simply being patient with Keisha wasn't working. Somehow, Keisha still didn't understand what real work was like. Alicia decided she needed to find a better way to teach her that lesson. The following day, Keisha was assigned responsibility for tracking income and expenses within her department. The job was far more complicated than anything she had handled before. It required communication with multiple departments, reviewing financial documents, and keeping track of large amounts of data. Even a small mistake could create serious problems. The moment the assignment landed on her desk, Keisha broke into a cold sweat. She had already struggled with simple reporting tasks. This was on a completely different level. As expected, the work overwhelmed her almost immediately. Keisha spent the entire day staring at the documents without knowing where to begin. Asking for help felt embarrassing. She had a college degree, and she didn't want everyone to discover how little she actually knew. Taking the work home wasn't much of an option either. Andre had already made it clear he wouldn't continue doing her job for her. 3 days passed, and Keisha still hadn't made any meaningful progress. Her team leader was growing nervous. This assignment had come directly from upper management, so failure would reflect badly on everyone involved. Eventually, the team leader walked over to Keisha's desk. "How's that project coming along?" Keisha sighed quietly. "You gave me a week. It's only been 3 days. Why are you asking already?" The team leader frowned. "Then show me what you've finished so far." Keisha didn't know what to say. Her computer screen was practically empty. The documents on her desk were untouched. Seeing that, the team leader's patience disappeared. "At the very least, you should have contacted the other departments and started collecting the information you need. How do you expect to finish anything sitting here doing nothing?" Keisha immediately stood up and followed the instructions she was given. One by one, she visited different departments requesting documents and records. But because she had no real work experience and wasn't particularly skilled at communicating with people, even that simple task felt difficult. While trying to figure out what she should say next, she walked into another department and suddenly froze. A familiar figure was sitting inside the office. It was Alicia. But what shocked Keisha wasn't seeing her sister-in-law. It was where Alicia was sitting. The office belonged to a department manager. Keisha rubbed her eyes and looked again. The person behind the desk was definitely Alicia. Without thinking, she hurried over. "Why are you working here? Why didn't you tell anyone?" Alicia looked up from the stack of documents on her desk. The familiar attitude in Keisha's voice immediately irritated her. "This is work hours," Alicia said calmly. "If it's not work-related, we can talk later." Then she stood up and walked away before Keisha could continue. Keisha remained standing there in shock. She couldn't stop thinking about what she had just discovered. Alicia wasn't an ordinary employee at all. She was a department manager. Almost immediately, another thought entered her mind. If Alicia held that kind of position, then why had she placed Keisha in a junior accounting role? Why had she allowed her to spend days doing filing work and inventory tasks? The more Keisha thought about it, the angrier she became. That afternoon, she left work early and rushed home to tell Valeria everything. After hearing what Keisha said, Valeria felt somewhat embarrassed by the things she had said in the past. She had never imagined that a daughter-in-law who looked as simple and plain as Alicia could be capable enough to hold a department manager position. Before the wedding, whenever Alicia came to visit, she had always modestly described herself as nothing more than an employee at a small company. Because of that, Valeria had always believed exactly that. She quickly called Andre. The moment he answered, Valeria immediately complained. "Andre, your wife is a department manager. Why didn't you tell me?" Andre let out a quiet sigh. "Back then, you kept opposing our marriage. I never even had the chance to tell you. Besides, every time you looked down on Alicia for being from a small town and not having much education, Alicia told me not to say anything." Andre thought his explanation might make Valeria feel embarrassed and perhaps respect Alicia more after realizing how modest she had been. Instead, Valeria interpreted everything differently. She muttered under her breath, "That girl is strange. She has such an important position and still kept it hidden. She was probably afraid she'd have to help her sister-in-law get a better job." Keisha immediately agreed. "Exactly, Mom. If she really cared, she would have found me a better position. Instead, she stuck me in an ordinary employee job." Keisha's words only made Valeria more upset. The two of them spent the rest of the afternoon complaining about Alicia. Even before leaving work, Alicia had already guessed what would happen. When Keisha saw her walk through the door, she immediately started speaking. "Well, Miss Department Manager is finally home. Since we're not at work anymore, can you sit down and listen to your sister-in-law for a minute?" Alicia disliked Keisha's attitude, but she didn't show it. She put her bag down, sat on the couch, and calmly replied, "If you have something to say, then say it." Keisha didn't waste any time. "Starting tomorrow, I want you to transfer me to another department. I'm tired of being an ordinary employee in that department. Every day it's nothing but pointless work. I can't stand it." Alicia frowned slightly. She hadn't expected Keisha to be this ridiculous. A faint smile appeared on her face. "That's funny. Even students who are still in school can do those tasks. You can't even handle work that simple, and yet you're already talking about doing something else. Before asking for a different position, maybe you should look at yourself first." Keisha's face immediately turned pale. Seeing her daughter being criticized, Valeria quickly stepped in. Her voice was as sharp as ever. "I've never seen anything like this. Other families do everything they can to help their relatives get better positions. You, on the other hand, keep holding your own sister-in-law back. Or are you afraid she'll end up doing better than you?" Alicia finally lost her patience. She could no longer tolerate the unreasonable attitude of both mother and daughter. With average grades and that kind of work ethic, who exactly is she supposed to do better than? Valeria raised her voice. "I don't care how you do it. You need to arrange a better position for her." Alicia was too tired to keep listening. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned around and headed upstairs, leaving Valeria and Keisha still complaining downstairs. Later that night, Alicia told Andre how frustrated she felt about everything that had happened. She made it clear that she would not continue making allowances for Keisha. Andre was caught between his wife and his family, but he knew his mother and sister had gone too far. In the end, he agreed and left the matter for Alicia to handle however she saw fit. Keisha went to work that morning feeling excited. Deep down, she was convinced Alicia would eventually give in to her mother's demands and move her to a different position. Sitting at her desk, Keisha casually took out her makeup compact and touched up her face. Through the mirror, she noticed her team leader walking toward her, but she paid no attention. She wasn't worried at all. The team leader was already irritated by Keisha's careless attitude and spoke without any friendliness. "Make sure you finish the assignment I gave you today." Keisha looked surprised. "What did you just say? Why am I still doing that?" "Didn't Alicia tell you?" the team leader replied. "That came directly from Alicia. If you have questions, go talk to her." Keisha immediately rushed upstairs to Alicia's office. Without even knocking, she barged in and marched straight to Alicia's desk. "What are you doing? Didn't you hear what Mom said yesterday?" Alicia stood up and looked directly at her. "When you're at work, you work. If you think you can't do the job, then write a resignation letter and leave." Keisha froze. All around them, employees had turned to look. People began whispering to each other, criticizing her rude behavior. Embarrassed, Keisha could only retreat. With her pride wounded and a pile of work she couldn't do, she grabbed her bag and walked out of the company. She didn't even bother informing anyone she was quitting. She simply left. Later, Alicia received a message from an employee informing her that Keisha had quit without notice. Alicia felt embarrassed by her sister-in-law's behavior. Keisha hurried home and immediately began complaining to Valeria. She exaggerated every detail, placing all the blame on Alicia. The more she talked, the angrier Valeria became. She was furious that her daughter had been treated that way, and even more furious that Alicia had ignored her instructions. Valeria called Alicia, intending to vent all her anger, but Alicia didn't answer. That only made her more upset. That same afternoon, Alicia came home already prepared for a confrontation with Valeria and Keisha. The moment she stepped through the gate, Valeria rushed out into the yard and pointed a finger straight at her. "People really can hide their true colors. Is this how you treat your own sister-in-law?" Alicia remained calm. "What did I do wrong?" Valeria gritted her teeth. "You still have the nerve to ask that? Just because she's your sister-in-law doesn't mean you can treat her however you want." Just as the argument was reaching its peak, Andre returned home from work. A short distance behind him was Raymond, who had just come back from his walk. Although both women lowered their voices slightly, the tension remained heavy. The moment Andre saw the anger on Valeria's face, he already knew what had happened. He tried to calm everyone down. "Let's all relax. Whatever happened, we can talk about it." Keisha was still furious. "Look at your wife. She doesn't care about anything Mom says." Andre frowned. "What happened?" Keisha immediately launched into a long complaint, telling the story from her perspective and unloading all of her frustration onto her brother. Hearing the commotion, Raymond walked in from outside. Seeing that Keisha still hadn't calmed down, he asked, "What is all this noise about now?" Keisha quickly pointed at Alicia. "Your daughter-in-law deliberately made things difficult for me at work and forced me to quit." Raymond looked toward Alicia, waiting for an explanation. Alicia remained silent, still trying to control her anger. Seeing that, Andre explained everything from the beginning. The more he spoke, the paler Valeria and Keisha became. Keisha tried to defend herself. "You're making it sound worse than it was." Raymond was horrified by what he heard. He had never imagined his wife and daughter could behave this way. Holding his head, he let out a frustrated sigh. "This is so embarrassing. How could the two of you even say things like that? A spoiled child is the result of bad parenting." Realizing the situation was getting worse, Andre took Alicia upstairs. Even after they closed the bedroom door, Alicia could still hear Raymond scolding Valeria and Keisha downstairs. For the next few days, the atmosphere in the house remained tense. On the surface, everyone acted as though nothing had happened, but each person carried different feelings inside. Raymond felt embarrassed toward Alicia and often avoided her. Andre was stuck between his wife, his mother, and his sister, leaving him in an extremely difficult position. Valeria and Keisha still felt resentful because of the argument and because Raymond had scolded them. As for Alicia, her anger had faded, but she couldn't help feeling disappointed. She had tried to help Keisha with good intentions, only to have those efforts thrown back in her face. From that moment on, Alicia made a promise to herself. No matter how badly Keisha handled her own life in the future, Alicia would no longer get involved. If Keisha suffered the consequences one day, that would be the result of her own choices. Ever since the argument, Keisha had refused to look for another job. She stayed home every day, doing whatever she pleased. No matter how much Raymond scolded her, she simply ignored him and waited for him to tire himself out. Once Keisha realized how much Andre and Alicia earned, she became even more comfortable staying unemployed. Valeria continued giving her whatever she wanted, so there was no reason for her to change. After learning how much money Andre and Alicia made, Valeria and Keisha even started thinking about how they could get more out of them. One morning, as Alicia opened the door to leave for work, Keisha stepped in front of her and blocked the way. Holding out her hand, she said, "I need some money to buy a few things. Lend me some." Her tone wasn't polite in the slightest. Alicia didn't like her attitude at all and wanted to refuse. But Keisha continued standing there, blocking the doorway. Not wanting to argue before work, Alicia reluctantly gave in. "How much?" "$5 million, Keisha replied. "I'll pay you back in a week." Alicia hated Keisha's disrespectful attitude, but arguing with her would only make the morning worse. "Send me your account number," she said coldly. A few moments later, the transfer was completed. Keisha immediately stepped aside, pleased with herself, while Alicia left for work. Alicia tried not to think about it again. A week passed, then another few days. Keisha never mentioned the money. That morning, seeing her sprawled out as usual, Alicia finally walked over and asked, "It's been more than a week. When are you paying me back?" Keisha never looked up from her phone. "I'll pay you when I have it. Why are you talking like a debt collector?" "You promised 1 week," Alicia replied. "You should keep your word." At that moment, Valeria walked out of her room. In her usual sharp tone, she immediately jumped into the conversation. "It's only a little money. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? If Keisha doesn't pay you, then I'll pay you. Nobody is trying to steal your money." Alicia was furious, but she held back. If she argued, she would only be accused of being petty. Andre was already coming downstairs, and she didn't want to put him in the middle of another fight. Valeria spoke confidently, but the money never came. Days passed, and neither Valeria nor Keisha paid anything back. The frustration continued building until Alicia finally told Andre everything. He listened quietly and could only comfort her. That afternoon, when Alicia came home from work, she noticed that Valeria seemed much friendlier than usual. Alicia wasn't surprised. Every month when payday came around for her and Andre, Valeria was always in a good mood. After dinner, Alicia handed over the household money for the month. At first, Valeria accepted it happily, but after counting it several times and finding only $5 million, she frowned. "Did you give me the wrong amount? Why is there only $5 million? Alicia answered calmly. "Keisha borrowed money from me before and never paid it back. You said you would pay it for her. I've waited long enough and nothing happened, so I deducted it from this month's money." Valeria's eyes widened in anger. "What did you just say? Who told you that you could deduct money on your own like that? If you hadn't promised to pay it back for her, I wouldn't have done it." Because she didn't receive the full amount she expected, Valeria immediately lost her temper. "You're getting more and more unreasonable. I've already been patient with you, and now you're taking things too far." At that moment, Andre walked out. The moment Valeria saw him, she pointed at Alicia. "Look at your wife. She only gave me $5 million this month. How am I supposed to manage the household with that?" This time, Andre couldn't side with his mother. That money was deducted because Keisha borrowed from Alicia and never paid it back. Borrowing is borrowing. Owing is owing. Seeing that her son wasn't taking her side, Valeria became even angrier. $5 million for an entire month? Do you expect everyone in this house to starve? Alicia finally spoke. "The electricity and water bills are already paid by us. I buy groceries regularly too. What exactly is missing?" Valeria opened her mouth but couldn't answer. She glanced toward Keisha, who was sitting nearby. Before she could say anything, Andre cut in. "Alicia has always tried to take care of this family. That doesn't mean we have to support people who refuse to work." The comment clearly referred to Keisha. She immediately jumped to her feet. "Who are you talking about? Have I ever spent $1,000 of your money?" Neither Andre nor Alicia responded to her. Andre continued speaking. "If things keep going like this, Alicia and I will move out. I don't want my wife dealing with this kind of pressure anymore." The moment Valeria heard that, her attitude softened. No matter how much she disliked Alicia, having Alicia in the house meant help with daily responsibilities. It also meant receiving money every month. Because of that, the argument finally came to an end. Valeria swallowed her anger and backed down. After Andre threatened to move out, she became somewhat less harsh toward Alicia. Even so, she still wasn't truly comfortable with her daughter-in-law. As for Keisha, nothing really changed. She continued spending her days having fun and avoiding responsibility. Ever since Alicia confronted her about borrowing money, she could no longer get money from Alicia. Occasionally, she asked Andre, but after helping her a few times, he stopped. Most of the money Keisha wanted was for going out with friends anyway. Whenever Andre refused, she simply went to Valeria instead. No matter how reluctant Valeria felt, she always ended up giving her daughter money in the end. Recently, Keisha had been going out a lot and rarely stayed at home because she had become friends with a group of people who didn't seem very decent. Among them was Darnell, who was pursuing her. The two got along very well, so they were always together wherever they went. After only a few weeks of knowing each other, Keisha quickly agreed to be his girlfriend. Darnell was good-looking, and he also dressed in a stylish and fashionable way, so it was easy for Keisha to be attracted to him. But people of the same kind often end up together. Darnell was also a drifter. His family was not well off. He had never taken school seriously, and he had spent years wandering around without doing anything worthwhile. Even his own family had become helpless because of him. That night, Andre came home late from work, so Alicia went out to the gate to wait for him. From a distance, she saw a motorcycle headlight shining brightly toward her. The glare made her raise a hand to cover her face. When the light went off, she saw Darnell bringing Keisha home. Just looking at Darnell made Alicia dislike him. His hair was dyed bright yellow. His clothes were flashy, sloppy, and torn. Darnell acted as if he didn't even see Alicia and didn't bother greeting her. Alicia ignored him as well and didn't want to look at him for another second. After Keisha went inside, Darnell remained standing there and looked at Alicia with a mocking expression. Before leaving, he even gave her a rude smile. That night, Alicia felt uncomfortable. She had planned not to interfere in Keisha's affairs anymore. But after seeing Darnell's disrespectful attitude, she couldn't accept it. After all, she was still Keisha's sister-in-law. Besides, she had a younger sister about the same age as Keisha. She was afraid that if Keisha made the wrong choice, she might suffer for the rest of her life. Because of that, Alicia decided to get involved one more time. She stopped Andre and told him what had happened. "Who is Keisha dating? That guy looked disrespectful, and he doesn't seem like a decent person at all. You should talk to Mom and Dad and try to stop her. If she gets involved too deeply and something happens later, she'll regret it." Andre had always listened to Alicia because he knew her personality well. She was straightforward, and the things she said were always true. She never exaggerated anything. Because of that, what Alicia said stayed on his mind. The following night, Andre sat waiting in a dark corner along the road. Just as Alicia had said, Darnell didn't bring Keisha home until late at night. He was riding a large motorcycle. Looking at Darnell's appearance, the way he dressed, and the way he spoke, Andre couldn't help feeling uncomfortable. He finally understood why Alicia had reacted so strongly. After Darnell left, Andre went inside and stopped Keisha. "Who is that guy you're dating?" Keisha seemed annoyed that he was interfering in her personal life. "Why are you getting involved in my business? I'm an adult. Who I date is my choice." Andre became irritated and raised his voice. "If I don't get involved, then should I just let you hang around with people who are no good? If something happens later, you'll be the one sitting there regretting it." Instead of understanding his concern, Keisha became even more unreasonable. "My business is none of yours. Since when did you become as nosy and meddlesome as your wife?" Hearing Keisha speak so disrespectfully, Andre lost his temper and slapped her. Keisha immediately started shouting, Mom, come out here and look, Andre hit me!" Valeria had always defended Keisha no matter what. The moment she heard Keisha accusing Andre of hitting her, she rushed over without even asking what had happened. "What are you doing, Andre? She's your own sister. If there's a problem, talk about it properly. Why would you hit her?" Andre tried to hold back his anger and told Valeria about Keisha dating Darnell. He also explained clearly why he was trying to stop her. He was worried because Darnell did not seem like a decent person. He was afraid Keisha would make a foolish decision and end up hurting herself. But contrary to what Andre expected, Valeria continued defending her daughter. "She's grown up now. Who she dates and who she becomes friends with is her business. Why do you keep interfering? Just because they're dating doesn't mean they'll get married. You're worrying too far ahead. No matter how much Andre tried to persuade her and explain that he was worried because Darnell did not seem respectable, Valeria kept defending Keisha. Because of that, Keisha became even more emboldened. She lifted her chin and looked at Andre as if challenging him. Andre was furious, but there was nothing more he could say. With both Valeria and Keisha refusing to listen, any further argument would only make things worse. After that night, Andre stopped trying to interfere in Keisha's relationship. Alicia had already expected that outcome. Neither she nor Andre brought the subject up again. A few weeks passed. Not only did Keisha continue seeing Darnell, but she spent even more time with him than before. Darnell also came to the house more often. One evening, Alicia and Andre returned home from work and found Darnell sitting at the dining table eating dinner with the family. Valeria had happily invited him to stay. Alicia and Andre exchanged glances but said nothing. They simply sat down and ate. The atmosphere at the table felt awkward. Alicia noticed that Darnell rarely looked anyone in the eye when he spoke. Most of the time, he only paid attention to Keisha. Raymond, on the other hand, hardly seemed interested in any of it. Since retiring, most of his time was spent with friends, playing chess, exercising, and attending activities for retirees. Unless something serious happened in the family, he rarely involved himself. Because of that, he paid almost no attention to Keisha's relationship with Darnell. With Valeria constantly supporting her and Raymond staying out of it, Keisha continued dating Darnell without any obstacles. Alicia never openly interfered. She only occasionally talked to Andre about her concerns. But after seeing that neither Keisha nor Valeria would listen, she eventually stopped bringing it up as well. Then one day, Alicia began noticing changes in Keisha. Her face looked pale. She seemed tired all the time. Sometimes she skipped meals. Other times she complained about feeling uncomfortable. One night around 10 o'clock, Alicia even saw Keisha sitting alone eating green mangoes. Since getting married, Alicia had always planned carefully before having children, so she didn't have personal experience with pregnancy. But at work, she had recently noticed that one of her pregnant coworkers had shown many of the same signs. The thought stayed in her mind. Although Alicia and Keisha barely spoke anymore, she still felt concerned. Finally, she walked over and said, "Keisha, don't you think you've been acting differently lately?" Keisha immediately became defensive. "Differently how? Or are things too peaceful lately, so now you're looking for trouble?" Alicia felt annoyed but kept her voice calm. "I'm not looking for trouble. I just think you might be pregnant. You should check." After saying that, Alicia turned around and left. Keisha continued muttering complaints behind her back. At first, she thought Alicia was deliberately trying to upset her. But after calming down, she suddenly remembered that her period was late. The more she thought about it, the more nervous she became. She quickly went out and bought a pregnancy test. The result was exactly what Alicia had suspected. She was pregnant. Strangely, Keisha wasn't worried at all. In fact, she believed Darnell would be happy when he found out. Whenever they were together, he often talked about having children and building a family in the future. Excited, Keisha immediately called him. Darnell answered in a cheerful voice. "Hey, baby, what's going on?" Keisha couldn't hide her excitement. "I have good news. I'm pregnant." Because they were talking over the phone, Keisha couldn't see the panic that flashed across Darnell's face. But Darnell reacted quickly. He forced himself to sound calm and happy. "Really? Since when?" "Tomorrow I'll take you to see a doctor." Hearing that response, Keisha became even happier. Just as she expected, Darnell sounded pleased after hearing the news. The two continued talking for a while. But right after that, Darnell quickly found an excuse to end the call. That afternoon, Valeria went into the bathroom to take a shower and saw a pregnancy test lying on the sink counter. Valeria picked up the pregnancy test and stared at it for a long moment. The first thought that came to her mind was Alicia. After all, Alicia and Andre had been married for quite some time, and she had often wondered when they planned to have children. Holding the pregnancy test in her hand, Valeria immediately became excited. Without thinking much further, she hurried upstairs and knocked on Alicia's bedroom door. Alicia opened the door and looked surprised. "Mom, is something wrong?" Valeria held up the pregnancy test. "Alicia, are you pregnant?" Alicia was confused. She looked at the pregnancy test and shook her head right away. No, that's not mine. The excitement on Valeria's face disappeared instantly. If it's not yours, then whose is it? Alicia immediately thought of Keisha. Earlier that day, she had been the one who suggested that Keisha buy a pregnancy test. Alicia did not answer right away. Instead, she walked downstairs and called out, "Keisha, come here for a minute." The moment Keisha saw the pregnancy test in Valeria's hand, her face changed. Alicia understood everything immediately. "It's yours, isn't it?" Keisha lowered her head and remained silent. That reaction was already enough of an answer. Valeria's eyes widened. "Keisha, are you pregnant?" Keisha hesitated for a long moment before finally nodding. The entire living room fell silent. Valeria stood there in shock. She had defended her daughter for so long, yet now things had reached this point. Just then, Andre and Raymond came home. Seeing everyone's expressions, they immediately sensed that something had happened. After hearing the news, Raymond became furious. "How could you let this happen before marriage?" Keisha started crying. "I didn't do it on purpose." Raymond was so angry that he could barely speak. Valeria was also stunned and did not know what to say. In the middle of the tension, Alicia was the only person who remained calm. She looked directly at Keisha and asked, "Have you told Darnell yet?" Keisha quickly nodded. "I already told him. He said he'll take me to see a doctor tomorrow." Hearing that, Raymond's expression softened slightly. At least Darnell had not run away immediately. Even so, no one in the house felt relieved. Everyone understood that a pregnancy before marriage was not a small matter. That night, nobody slept well. Each person worried about what might happen next. Early the next morning, Keisha got ready and waited for Darnell to come pick her up. Unlike her usual self, she spent a long time choosing clothes and fixing her appearance. Even after everything that had happened the night before, she still believed Darnell would take responsibility. But she waited all morning and Darnell never came. At first, she thought he might still be asleep. She called him several times, but no one answered. Keisha started feeling uneasy. She sent messages one after another, but there was still no reply. By the afternoon, she could no longer sit still. She grabbed her phone and rushed out to look for him. Seeing Keisha panic like that, Alicia had a bad feeling. Quietly, she followed behind. Keisha first went to Darnell's house, but he was not there. His parents said they had not seen him since the previous night. The more she searched, the more frightened she became. She called again and again, but Darnell continued ignoring her. By evening, Keisha was almost in tears. After asking around, she finally learned that Darnell was spending time at a bar with a group of friends. Without thinking, she immediately headed there. Alicia followed from a distance. When Keisha arrived, the scene in front of her made her freeze. Darnell was sitting with another woman in his arms, laughing and drinking as if nothing had happened. Keisha walked straight toward him. "Darnell, what are you doing?" Darnell looked up. The moment he saw her, annoyance flashed across his face. "Why are you here?" Keisha stared at him in disbelief. "I've been calling you all day. Why didn't you answer?" Darnell clicked his tongue. "I was busy." Keisha's voice started shaking with anger. "Busy doing this? I told you yesterday that I'm pregnant." Darnell immediately glanced around at the people nearby. Then he lowered his voice. "So what?" Keisha felt as if she had heard wrong. "What do you mean? So what?" Darnell leaned back in his chair. "How do I know that kid is mine?" Those words hit Keisha like a slap. She stared at him in shock. "What did you just say?" Darnell shrugged. "You heard me." Keisha felt her anger explode. "You were the one who kept talking about getting married and having children. Now you're denying everything?" Darnell's expression darkened. "Stop making a scene." Keisha grabbed his shirt. "You're coming with me right now." Darnell immediately shoved her hand away. "Get your hands off me." The push almost made Keisha lose her balance. Seeing that, Alicia could no longer stand by and watch. She walked straight over. Darnell looked up and recognized her. Before he could say anything, Alicia stepped between him and Keisha. "So this is the kind of man you really are." Darnell laughed coldly. "This is none of your business." Alicia looked directly at him. "It became my business the moment you got my sister-in-law pregnant and tried to run away from responsibility." Darnell stood up. "Watch how you talk to me." Alicia did not back down. The people around them had already stopped drinking and started watching. For the first time, Darnell looked uncomfortable. Keisha stood behind Alicia, crying. Everything she had believed about Darnell had fallen apart in a single moment. Seeing Keisha crying behind Alicia, Darnell became even more irritated. He looked around at the crowd gathering to watch and felt embarrassed. "I told you already. Stop making trouble here." Alicia looked directly at him. "Making trouble? Keisha is carrying your child, and now you're pretending none of it has anything to do with you." Darnell laughed coldly. "Who says that kid is mine?" Hearing those words again, Keisha broke down even harder. Alicia could no longer control her anger. "If you don't think the child is yours, then we can go take a DNA test after the baby is born. But right now, running away won't solve anything." Darnell's expression darkened. "I don't have time for this nonsense." He turned as if he wanted to leave. Keisha immediately stepped forward and grabbed him. "Darnell, you can't do this to me." Darnell forcefully shook her hand away. "Get lost." The strength of the shove caused Keisha to stumble backward. Alicia quickly reached out and caught her. The people around them immediately started whispering. Some pointed at Darnell while others shook their heads in disgust. Darnell felt humiliated and angry. "This is my life. None of you have the right to tell me what to do." Alicia stepped forward. "You're right. It's your life. But when your actions hurt other people, you don't get to walk away pretending you're innocent." Darnell glared at her. "Stay out of my business." Alicia did not move. "Then answer one question. Are you taking responsibility for Keisha and the child or not?" Darnell remained silent for several seconds before finally speaking. "No." The answer was short and direct. Keisha felt her legs go weak. Alicia had expected it, but hearing it out loud still made her furious. Darnell looked at Keisha without the slightest trace of guilt. "I never told you to get pregnant." That sentence completely shattered the last bit of hope Keisha had left. She covered her face and cried. Alicia looked at Darnell with disappointment. "One day you're going to regret this," Darnell snorted. "Save your lecture for someone who cares." Alicia knew there was no point arguing any further. She gently held Keisha by the arm. "Let's go home." Keisha did not resist. She looked like a completely different person from the confident young woman she had been only a day earlier. As Alicia led her away, Darnell sat back down with his friends as though nothing had happened. On the way home, Keisha cried the entire time. Alicia said very little. She already understood that what Keisha needed most right now was not another lecture. When they finally arrived home and told the family everything that had happened, the entire house fell silent. Raymond clenched his fists in anger. Valeria sat down heavily and stared blankly ahead. Neither of them had expected Darnell to be that irresponsible. Alicia looked at Keisha and made a decision. If Darnell thought he could simply walk away from this, then he was about to learn otherwise. The next morning, Alicia began asking around about Darnell. She knew that dealing with someone like him would not be easy. If she wanted to force him to take responsibility, she first needed to understand exactly what kind of person he was. Over the next few days, she quietly gathered information from people who knew him. The more she learned, the more disappointed she became. Darnell had spent years drifting around with different groups of friends. He rarely held a stable job and often depended on his parents for money. He had also dated several women before Keisha. Some of those relationships had ended badly. Alicia even heard rumors that he had borrowed money from people and never paid it back. After collecting enough information, Alicia decided to visit Darnell's house. She went alone. When Darnell's parents saw her, they immediately knew why she had come. Alicia explained everything directly. She told them that Keisha was pregnant and that Darnell had refused to take responsibility. Darnell's father frowned. His mother looked embarrassed, but neither of them seemed surprised. After a long silence, Darnell's father finally spoke. "We're sorry about what happened, but Darnell is an adult. We can't force him to do anything." Alicia looked at them calmly. "I'm not asking you to force him. I'm asking you to help him face the responsibility he created." Darnell's mother lowered her head. "We've tried to change him for years. He doesn't listen to us anymore." Alicia left the house feeling frustrated. But instead of giving up, she continued investigating. The more information she gathered, the clearer the picture became. Darnell's family had spent years cleaning up his mistakes. That was why he had become the kind of person who never feared consequences. A few days later, Alicia went back to the same bar where she had found him before. This time she came prepared. When Darnell saw her, he immediately looked annoyed. "Why are you here again?" Alicia placed a folder on the table in front of him. Darnell frowned and opened it. Inside were documents, records, and information Alicia had collected about him. The expression on his face slowly changed. "What is this?" Alicia folded her arms. "Information. More than enough information." Darnell's confidence began to fade. Alicia continued, "You can keep pretending nothing happened if you want. But if you refuse responsibility, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you are." For the first time, Darnell looked nervous. His friends exchanged uneasy glances. Alicia did not raise her voice. She simply continued speaking. "You have two choices. Either you take responsibility for Keisha and the baby, or this becomes a much bigger problem than you want." Darnell remained silent. A few moments later, his parents arrived after being contacted by Alicia earlier. The moment they saw the documents, their faces turned pale. They understood immediately that Alicia was serious. After a long discussion, Darnell's father finally looked at his son and said, "Enough. You're going to take responsibility." Darnell wanted to argue, but nobody supported him anymore. For the first time in a very long while, he found himself cornered. In the end, his family agreed to come to Andre's house and formally discuss marriage. When Darnell's family came to Andre's house, the atmosphere was extremely awkward. Nobody looked comfortable. Keisha sat quietly with her head lowered. Ever since the incident at the bar, she had barely spoken. Darnell also sat there with a gloomy expression. It was obvious that he had not come willingly. Alicia sat beside Andre and watched everything in silence. After everyone exchanged a few formal greetings, Raymond finally spoke first. "Since we're all here, let's talk openly. Keisha is carrying Darnell's child. We need to discuss what comes next." Darnell's father nodded awkwardly. "You're right. What happened has already happened. We came today because we want to find a solution." For a while, the two families discussed wedding arrangements. Throughout the conversation, Darnell remained silent. Whenever someone asked for his opinion, he only gave short answers. Alicia noticed everything but said nothing. Eventually, the discussion turned to where the young couple would live after marriage. At that point, Alicia finally spoke. "If they're getting married, then Darnell should move here." The room immediately fell silent. Darnell looked up. "What?" Alicia repeated calmly. "Darnell should move here after the wedding." Darnell's face darkened immediately. "Why would I live here?" Alicia looked directly at him. "Because Keisha is pregnant. She needs people around her. And after everything that's happened, nobody trusts you enough to let her move away with you." Darnell opened his mouth to argue, but Alicia continued before he could speak. "If you truly want to take responsibility, then this shouldn't be a problem." Darnell's parents exchanged glances. They clearly understood Alicia's reasoning. After a long silence, Darnell's father nodded. "She's right. Keisha needs support right now." Darnell immediately objected. "I'm not moving here." Raymond's expression hardened. "Then maybe you're not ready to be a husband or a father." The room fell silent again. With both families looking at him, Darnell found himself unable to argue any further. In the end, he reluctantly agreed. Not long afterward, the wedding took place. It was not a joyful wedding like most people dream about. Too many things had happened beforehand. Even so, both families did their best to make it respectable. During the ceremony, Keisha looked at Alicia several times. She knew very well that without Alicia, Darnell would never have agreed to any of this. For the first time in a long while, Keisha felt grateful toward her sister-in-law. Even Valeria's attitude softened. She still rarely praised Alicia openly, but deep down she knew that Alicia had protected Keisha when nobody else could. After the wedding, Darnell moved into the house. Although he was officially part of the family now, everyone understood that the real challenge was only beginning. Not long after the wedding, Alicia realized that getting Darnell to marry Keisha had only solved one problem. It had not changed who he was. Even after moving into the house, Darnell remained lazy and irresponsible. Most days, he slept late, wandered around with friends, and showed little interest in finding stable work. Whenever Raymond or Andre tried to talk to him, he would agree to everything at the moment and then continue doing whatever he wanted afterward. Keisha was pregnant and spent most of her time at home. Because of that, she saw Darnell's behavior more clearly than ever before. The image she once had of him was slowly disappearing. Even so, she still hoped he would eventually change. Alicia watched everything quietly. She had already done her part by forcing Darnell to take responsibility. Whether he became a better person after that depended on him. A few months later, Keisha's pregnancy began showing more clearly. One day, Alicia asked, "When was the last time Darnell took you to a prenatal checkup?" Keisha lowered her head and hesitated. "I usually go with Mom." Alicia frowned. "What about Darnell?" Keisha did not answer. That silence told Alicia everything she needed to know. That evening, when Darnell came home, Alicia stopped him before he could go upstairs. "When are you taking Keisha to her next prenatal appointment?" Darnell looked annoyed. "She's already been going." Alicia crossed her arms. "That's not what I asked. Where are you taking her?" Darnell clicked his tongue. "I'm busy." Alicia looked directly at him. "You're busy doing what?" Darnell immediately fell silent. Everyone in the house knew exactly how he spent most of his days. Raymond looked over from his chair and added, "She's carrying your child. If you can't even take her to a doctor's appointment, then what exactly are you doing as a husband?" For once, Darnell had no answer. A few days later, he reluctantly accompanied Keisha to her prenatal checkup. It was the first time he had gone with her. After that, Alicia continued paying attention. Whenever Darnell tried avoiding responsibility, she called him out. Whenever he promised something and failed to do it, she reminded him in front of everyone. At first, Darnell hated it. He felt like Alicia was always watching him. But over time, something slowly began to change. He started spending more time at home. He argued less. He even began taking small jobs to earn money. The changes were not dramatic, but they were real. Keisha noticed them too. For the first time since becoming pregnant, she began feeling hopeful again. Valeria also started looking at Alicia differently. More than once, she realized that if Alicia had not stepped in, both Keisha and the baby would have been abandoned. Even though she rarely admitted it out loud, her attitude toward Alicia gradually softened. The family was still far from perfect. Arguments still happened from time to time. But compared to the chaos of the past, things were slowly moving in a better direction. Looking around the dinner table one evening, Alicia felt that all the trouble she had gone through had not been completely wasted. This morning, Alicia had a meeting with a business partner at a fairly large coffee shop. Because the meeting was important, she arrived early to prepare a few more documents. As soon as she walked into the coffee shop, she noticed a familiar figure. Looking more closely, she realized it was Raymond. Alicia was extremely surprised. Raymond had never been someone who regularly drank coffee. More importantly, he was sitting with a young woman. Alicia quietly sat down behind him, so Raymond did not notice her presence. She listened carefully to their conversation. That was when she discovered that the relationship between the two of them was an affair. She was truly shocked. From the beginning, Raymond had always appeared to be a serious and respectable man. Seeing this scene with her own eyes, Alicia could hardly believe it. She looked carefully at the young woman sitting across from him. The woman appeared to be around Keisha's age. Judging by her flirtatious behavior, Alicia guessed she was probably the type who stayed close to an older man for money. Alicia spent a long time thinking about how she should handle the situation. If she made a scene right there, Raymond would lose face. It would also make the relationship between father-in-law and daughter-in-law extremely awkward. But if she stayed silent, it would be no different from encouraging Raymond's wrongdoing. And the person who would suffer the most would be Valeria. After thinking for a long time, Alicia finally stood up and walked toward Raymond's table. The moment Raymond saw her, he froze in shock and could barely get any words out. Alicia glanced at the young woman, smiled slightly, then grabbed Raymond's hand and spoke in a sweet voice. "Honey, didn't you say you were taking me to buy a new phone this morning? Why are you sitting here? And who is this woman?" Raymond was so shocked that he could not say anything. At the same time, Alicia was squeezing his hand tightly, making him wince in pain. Seeing that, the young woman immediately widened her eyes and snapped, "Who are you? Why are you saying things like that?" Alicia raised a finger to her lips, signaling for her to be quiet. Then she leaned closer and whispered into the woman's ear, "If you want everyone in this coffee shop to know that you're seeing a man old enough to be your father for money, then go ahead and keep talking loudly." The threat worked immediately. The young woman's aggressive attitude disappeared at once. Alicia smirked and continued, "I'm just like you. I'm following him around hoping to get some money too. You're pretty naive, aren't you? If he can support you, he can support plenty of other women as well." Those words made the young woman furious. She stood up and stormed away. Before leaving, she shouted directly at Raymond, "You're a liar!" Only after she left did Alicia release Raymond's hand and sit down across from him. "Dad, aren't you afraid Mom will find out about this?" Raymond was both embarrassed and ashamed. He did not know how to answer. All he could do was plead with her. "Please, Alicia. I was just looking for a little excitement outside the house. Nothing has happened yet. I've only known that girl for a few days. Please keep this a secret for me." Alicia did not want to make the situation bigger than it already was. She knew that if the truth came out, Valeria would be the one hurt the most, and the whole family would lose its happiness. After that, she asked Raymond why, at his age, he was still chasing after women outside his marriage. Raymond finally admitted what had been on his mind for years. Throughout their marriage, Valeria had never once given him a proper home-cooked meal. The way she spoke to him was rarely gentle. On top of that, she never took care of herself and often looked untidy. After years of living that way, Raymond had become tired and started looking for a little comfort outside the home. But he insisted that he never wanted to leave his wife or abandon his family. After hearing everything, Alicia felt a heavy weight in her heart. She did not know what the right solution was. For the moment, she promised Raymond that she would keep the matter secret. But she also made him promise to end every outside relationship completely, reflect on his actions, and return his focus to his family. After that day, Alicia stopped working overtime so often. She usually came home earlier and started inviting Valeria to attend cooking classes with her. At first, Valeria refused. She had never been good at cooking and honestly did not enjoy it. But Alicia kept persuading her, so eventually Valeria reluctantly agreed to go. When she arrived at the cooking class, there happened to be several women around her age there. Before long, she made new friends. They cooked together, exchanged recipes, and talked with one another. Because of that, it only took a short time for Valeria's cooking skills to improve noticeably. One evening, a table full of attractive dishes was set out for dinner. Raymond was so surprised that he asked, "Alicia, did you get off work early today? How did you have time to make all of this?" Alicia smiled and replied, "Mom made it. Try it and see if you like it." Raymond picked up a spoonful of food. He truly had not expected his wife's cooking to improve so much. He kept praising the food and saying how good it tasted. Hearing those compliments made Valeria happy and much more confident about her cooking. Later that night, when Valeria was getting ready for bed, she heard a knock at the door. When she opened it and saw Alicia standing there, she smiled warmly. During this period, she no longer held any prejudice against Alicia. Instead, she had begun caring for her almost like a daughter. "It's late. Why aren't you asleep? What are you doing here?" Alicia handed her a shopping bag. Inside were clothes and some cosmetics. "I just got paid, so I bought a few things for you." Valeria opened the bag and immediately saw that the clothes and cosmetics were expensive. She felt both touched and guilty. "Why did you buy so many things? This must have cost a lot of money." Alicia gently held her hand. "Sometimes you shouldn't be too worried about spending money, Mom. Women should take care of themselves and look nice at every age. Please accept them and make me happy. Little by little, I'm going to replace all your old clothes." Tears welled up in Valeria's eyes because of Alicia's sincerity. Her own daughter had never bought her anything like this before. Alicia had given her gifts in the past, but back then, Valeria had been full of prejudice and never appreciated them. Now she felt incredibly fortunate to have a daughter-in-law like Alicia. From the day Alicia started paying more attention to her, Valeria gradually changed. She looked younger, healthier, and much more cheerful. She had also made many friends from the cooking class, so her life was no longer dull and lonely. Because of that, even the way she spoke to Raymond became gentler. Raymond understood that all of those changes were thanks to Alicia. He also remembered Alicia's promise to keep his mistake a secret. Because she had protected both him and the family's happiness, he felt deeply grateful to her. Now, seeing his family happy and his wife smiling more often and taking better care of herself, Raymond felt satisfied. He no longer thought about the meaningless things he had once been tempted by outside the home. Before long, Keisha gave birth to her baby. Everyone knew how difficult it was to raise a young child. Because of that, during this period, Alicia kept a closer eye on Darnell and pushed him to pay more attention to his wife and child. Partly because of Alicia's influence, or perhaps because becoming a father had changed him, Darnell gradually became more caring toward his family. He also became much more careful with the way he spoke and behaved. After Keisha's child was older and stronger, Andre and Alicia helped Keisha and Darnell with some startup money so they could open a small convenience store. Thanks to that, the couple finally had a stable source of income and steady work. Only then were Raymond and Valeria able to put aside the constant worry that had weighed on their minds for so long. Tonight, while everyone was eating dinner together, Alicia suddenly felt nauseous. Normally, sour fish soup was one of her favorite dishes, but for some reason today, she found the smell too strong and could not eat it. While Andre and Raymond were still confused about what was happening, Keisha and Valeria started smiling. Valeria spoke excitedly. "Looks like your father and I are about to have another grandchild." The moment Valeria finished speaking, Andre's face lit up. He was so happy that he immediately lifted Alicia into his arms. Valeria instantly became nervous and scolded him. "What are you doing? Put her down. What if you hurt my grandchild?" From the day Alicia became pregnant, Andre stopped letting her work too hard. Every day, she went to work and came home right on time. As for the household chores, Valeria took care of everything herself. Keisha also stopped by from time to help her mother around the house. Every day, Valeria went to the market to buy nutritious food for Alicia. The people at the market were surprised by how much she had changed. Some even whispered among themselves that anyone watching Valeria shop would think it was her own daughter who was pregnant. Whenever she heard comments like that, Valeria simply smiled. She knew she had not treated Alicia well in the past, so she understood why people found her change so surprising. Before long, the day of Alicia's delivery arrived. That afternoon, she was eating a bowl of sweet dessert when labor pains suddenly hit. Andre had not returned from work yet, and only Valeria was home. Panicked, Valeria called for a taxi. The longer she waited for the car to arrive, the more anxious she became. She kept trying to reassure Alicia while running back inside to gather the documents needed for hospital admission. By the time they arrived at the hospital, it was crowded. Alicia's water had already broken, and she was bent over in pain. Valeria was so worried that her face turned pale. She shouted loudly, "Doctor, hurry! My daughter is about to give birth. She's in too much pain." Even through the contractions, Alicia clearly heard Valeria call her "my daughter." The way Valeria acted now was exactly the same way she had acted when Keisha gave birth. Alicia felt deeply moved. At that moment, it almost felt as if the pain had become easier to bear. Tears filled her eyes because she knew Valeria had truly changed. Alicia safely gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Valeria held the baby in her arms and could not stop smiling. She carried him around proudly, telling everyone in the maternity ward that her daughter had just given birth to a chubby grandson. Andre could not help laughing when he saw that. He turned to tease his mother. Funny. There was someone who used to oppose this marriage with everything she had. Valeria looked embarrassed and shot him a glance. "People make mistakes sometimes. I was wrong. But thankfully, you weren't wrong about your wife." Then Valeria sat down beside Alicia and gently held her hand. "Thank you for not turning your back on me. I did many things wrong in the past. But from now on, let me make up for those mistakes, okay?" Unlike many daughters-in-law who choose to suffer in silence after marrying into another family, Alicia is a strong woman who is always willing to stand up for what is right and refuses to let anyone take advantage of her. Yet beneath that strength is a kind and compassionate heart. Even after being treated unfairly, judged, and spoken badly about behind her back, she continued to choose understanding over resentment and kindness over revenge. Through her intelligence, resilience, and genuine care for others, Alicia gradually helped her husband's family become better people. One by one, each family member came to recognize her true worth, while also learning to see the value within themselves. Alicia did not win over her husband's family through manipulation or cruel schemes. Instead, she earned their respect through compassion, wisdom, and the strength of a woman who never stopped standing up for what was right. In the end, she gained far more than acceptance. She earned the love, gratitude, and respect of the very people who once refused to welcome her into their family.